Hi, welcome to part two of my series on Pena Blanca in the area at the south end of the Organ Mountains in Doñana County, New Mexico. In part one, I showed how Pena Blanca and this ridge have all been disturbed to form geoglyphs and how those geoglyphs scale out to include the whole entire East Mesa of Las Cruces, New Mexico. In the upper right, you can see the disturbance as this white or real light area around Pena Blanca appears to form a bird at this scale. As you zoom in, you can see again where Pena Blanca and this ridge are and all the disturbances around it. This is Pena Blanca, and this is the main ridge line coming off the south end of the Organs. It's all part of the same rhyolitic tuff formation. And here's a view of that main ridge line from the south side. I'm going to start with that sort of purplish area and the lighter area above it that's at the top of this ridge line. If you look from above, you can see that it forms various glyphs. Essentially, these are giant bas relief heads and faces combined with other disturbances and hills to form even larger pictures. When I zoom in on the contact between the sort of yellowish rock and purplish rock, it appears that some of the rock has been removed, and the rock that has been left behind forms various faces. There are multiple overlapping faces, and on the left, a figure that actually looks like Dracula. Could it be that some of our iconography and stories came from these tribes of people? I'm going to zoom in on this sort of yellowish rock on the left side of this picture and show you how this was made. If you can see a face like that, somewhat like that, there's this pile of rocks down here that forms the chin and neck. It's been brought in, and it's a darker rock than what this tuff. The tuff itself has also been carved out. And if you zoom in with different lighting, you can see how this rhyolitic tuff has been carved out to form a seated figure. And as we look at some different shots, you can see how these rock formations have all been modified to form various figures, faces, shapes. Some of it visible in oblique lighting like this, some of it only shows up when you get direct lighting and you see all the colorations. And to the left you can see the top of a ridge line where a whole bunch of boulders have been hauled over to there and put on flat platforms. Again, most likely tombs. There appear to be faces carved into the rock just about everywhere on this ridge line. When you zoom out and flip it around with north towards the top of the picture, it forms another face of an older man wearing a turban, and even the turban forms a face. The ear is that same nice round formation I showed in part one, and it might be the location of a tomb. Now I've flipped it all the way around so west is at the top of the screen. So this is the side of a very steep mountain sloping down towards the top of the picture. From this direction, this same area forms a whole bunch of different figures that all combine to create one big picture. I'm going to zoom in on the left half of this shot and show you how the purplish area forms a ship and the yellowish area forms a figure pointing south. You can see how these boulders on this ridge line are kind of intriguing and strange looking. They appear to be on cleared flat areas. When you reverse the colors, other details kind of come out. The ship's masts appear to have figures of animals. There might be an animal on the bow, like a figurehead, could form a face. And then the dark area in the middle right is that figure's body and face. from a reversed perspective so that it's dark instead of light, and side by side. Kind of gives you a different look and details what this guy's face is supposed to look like. I would say he might represent a Viking, because I think the Vikings were one of the tribes of the Aztec. Some of the screenshots with reversed colors really do look like paintings. Now I want to return to the main ridge. This rhyolitic tuff has been carved into various figures. From this view on top of Pena Blanca, you can see that the entire ridge itself looks like the face of a person. And if that's the case, and this area here might be an ear and an earlobe, then there might be a tomb built by this person who had this probably commissioned in a sense. A view from the far south show how Pena Blanca and this ridgeline have all been disturbed. When you get close, you can see all these various figures have been carved into the tuff. It's a really soft rock, so it was kind of hard for them to make really distinct figures, and then the erosion after 600 plus years it probably weathered them a little bit too. But I think they were kind of like this at the start, that they were kind of rough and not real clear carvings. Getting ready to take off with a glider. There's various faces carved into the rock, and then on the right you can see a figure that's seated with a monkey and a gorilla. Late one afternoon I was coming back from prospecting in the Bishop Cat Mountains and took this shot, and from this lighting you can see various faces and even a serpent's head. Just about every rock on the side of this hill appears to have been carved into some shape, including these faces to the east end of the ridge that are facing up and to the south. And just to note, the next mountain ridge over has the same disturbances and carvings in the rocks there. If you look down towards the west end of the ridge, could form the face of an animal like that. And then up on the ridge there's lots of little carvings. This looks like a hog. When you look at a different angle or a little closer, it actually looks like a lemur on top of someone's back who's kind of down on the ground, crouching or laying down. There's a view from below. Another carving. So Pena Blanca, this piece of rock sitting out by itself here, it itself has been carved into a face that's pointed up into the south. And in that face there I found horizontal drill holes. And it's not historic prospecting because there are no minerals in this rhyolitic tuff. Nobody would go to this kind of trouble to drill a bunch of holes into this rock formation looking for any kind of commodity. This is all prehistoric activity. In conclusion, I'd like to say that I think this soft, tough ridge line here is full of catacombs. You might think that's unusual to say, but we have catacombs like these in eastern Arizona. Everybody knows about them, knows that there were burials in there, but they had been disturbed and robbed for a long time. All over the world, these rhyolitic tuff formations or soft ash, volcanic ash formations have had tombs and catacombs dug into them. In Turkey, they've mistakenly called them cities. Nobody lives underground. People used them to hide in maybe at times, and because the outer parts of them were lived in by people later, they became cities. But they're obviously catacombs when you look at them inside. There's no way people are going to live for very long underground, even with vent holes and water sources and such. If you're hiding from an army, the enemies, You can be smoked out. You can have chemicals and acids and different things poured down there. I mean, you wouldn't survive very long trying to live in a hole in the ground. My theory is that by this time in prehistory, these tribes had been burying their people underground for a long time, and that they found that their tombs had been robbed in various places around the world. So they got better and better. By the time they were here, they were putting their tombs deep underground in things we've mistaken as mine shafts, and putting them in locations only indicated by geoglyphs, which you can only see from above. So earlier historic people wouldn't have been, flying around looking for tombs and earlobes of glyphs and things like that. So they got much better at hiding where their tombs are. And that's why they haven't been found. That, and with happenstance, the fact that we had no idea these people were here until I started discovering it lately. And archaeologists have been so convinced and brainwashed that Columbus discovered America and that these people had been isolated for thousands of years and that they didn't really have any sort of higher technology, because the people they found here were the Pueblo Indians, and that they were living a simpler life after all this empire building had already passed and left them behind. Quickly, I'd like to get back to the idea that the Vikings were one of the tribes of the Aztec. There's artwork from around the world that shows that people everywhere were from the same culture or very similar cultures. A lot of this artwork relates to paragliding and flying. And that makes sense because flying would have been the sort of highest technology, most exciting thing that these people had invented. And this picture is just one example. If you see in the upper left, it's a Viking stone carving showing people processing human intestines. You can see two of the Aztec panels show the exact same thing of people processing intestines. I believe that they were using these like catgut to make line for their paragliders and for other purposes. Another thing is I encourage anyone to go and look through all the different artwork for Mesoamerica. You'll notice that the people depicted come from all the races of the world, and never or rarely do you even see anyone who looks like an Amerindian or Eskimo person. They all look like people from other parts of the world. So I think we need to reevaluate how we look at the people in the Americas.